best way to learn a language is sit down, watch anime, and make Anki cards. Anki has been one of the most contested language learning apps of all time. On one hand, you have people like Shelma saying stuff like this.
I was doing a lot of Anki, but
how many hours a day were you?
All of them.
And on the other, you have people like Dave of Swedish and French saying stuff like this.
It's not spaced repetition, it's just a spaced waste of time.
Well, we've interviewed over 69 high-level Japanese speakers, and we find out if Anki is really the holy grail of language learning. I mean, I've been using Anki every day for 3 years since I've been studying Japanese.
So, do you think it's helped you become more fluent in Japanese?
Well, not really, but I guess I can read obscure kanji.
So, does that mean I don't need to use Anki?
Well, Anki is useful because if you do Anki, you can read kanji, and if you read kanji, you can read books. And if you can read books, then you're understanding Japanese grammar, which leads to higher comprehension. But I guess after doing it for 3 years, I didn't notice that most high-level speakers of Japanese either have never used Anki or have stopped using Anki. I mean, just look at Dave Spector, one of the most famous foreigners in Japan. He never used Anki. He actually just wrote down every word he didn't know on an old school notebook.
Okay, well, to be fair, that was in 1980. I don't think the creator of Anki was even born back then.
The average toddler spends, 45 hours a year on the
Anki.
Instead, we should look at what most fluent speakers do in the modern age.
Well, luckily there's a Japanese guy who ranks all these high-level speakers of Japanese on YouTube. And what do you think all these people have in common?
They were on the KoreKara podcast?
No, oh, maybe. But besides that, what else?
Well, Dogen, Nick, and Ananya didn't really use Anki, and Matt and Harry did grind it pretty hard, so I guess you don't have to use Anki to get good at Japanese, and I guess you don't have to live in Japan either.
Yeah, Matt, Ananya, and Harry, I guess they didn't even live in Japan, but they did spend a large amount of time interacting with natives through the internet, like through Hello Talk.
So does that mean Hello Talk is the way?
He must have had like a tooth fetish or something. He really liked like well-shaped teeth. And he was asking for a picture of my teeth and my friend's teeth. It's kind of crazy what that app does.
Anyways, it is important to interact with natives. Not just to practice Japanese, but because you're the average of the 5 people you interact with the most. So the more you interact with Japanese people, the more you'll be able to see things from an inside perspective and not as an imposter.
Right, and that's different from just going up and talking to Japanese strangers, because if you don't develop a deep connection, it's always gonna just be a cultural exchange, right?
Yeah, the people who get good at Japanese are people who adopt the Japanese mindset.
Japanese people are skillful with chopsticks. So now I will be Japanese. Domo. I'm Japanese.
What about the number 1 person on the list?
Yeah, even the number 1 foreign speaker on Japanese, Mui, who this guy says sounds completely native. She has a video where she talks about she speaks Japanese with all of her Chinese friends in Japan. I mean, most likely because they don't really just identify with being a learner of Japanese, but rather that being Japanese has become an integral part of their identity. That's why it's a lot easier to learn the language if you're dating somebody from the country, because you develop such a closer relationship that you're no longer an outsider looking in. You become able to see things from a Japanese perspective.
The idea that if you're learning a language, you should like date somebody who's a native speaker, it probably is like one of the most powerful things you can do to kind of supercharge your language learning experience, just because, you know, when you're that close to another like human being, of course you influence each other so much. And so it's like it's one of the best ways to get like a really close window into the culture.
Yeah, just make sure you don't get catfished.
One thing I learned was the power of identity and how it leads to behavioral change.
Identity influences everything. It influences what you think, the way you feel, what you're willing to do or not do. It shapes it all. So if you're not doing it, it's time to expand your identity.
So if you identify with Japanese people and that becomes part of your identity, then you'll naturally take the steps necessary to get to that next level of Japanese. And the core philosophy of studying Japanese just by immersing in it all Japanese all the time is only half the story, because if you want to get good, you have to live a life in Japanese, which means making Japanese friends, having hobbies and jobs where you use Japanese, and ultimately identifying with the Japanese people.
Did you get any of that?
Do
you think a native level is possible, check out our heated debate with Oriental Pearl.